I found it a very important field, because if your mental health is not well, everything else is not well. It's a very core part that often is missing in a lot of the bigger picture. So it's either not discussed or maybe not given as much importance. And I think it's really the core of everything.
Hello and welcome once again to my youth channel, Say Something with Mads, where I bring young change makers from across the globe to put across their point of view, what they think about what is important to them. And this channel is to give them a platform, and we are here to listen to them. Today is a special day. We have a very, very special guest, Elizabeth Gamarra. She is joining me from Tokyo. And Tokyo, Japan is my favorite place. I have visited it once, but I would love to go back there again and again. So I would also talk about her achievements, her work, but I will also talk about Japan as a country, as a culture. So there's a lot on the plate today. So welcome, Elizabeth. How are you feeling today? Are you excited?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited. I've been very looking forward to this wonderful opportunity to speak with you and be part of this wonderful community. Yes.
Thank you so much for accepting this. And as the talk progresses, you will see why Elizabeth is here and why I connected with her. It's so inspiring to see her journey. Elizabeth, over to you to tell me a little bit about your background, your schooling. I know it, but for the audience, let's see where you started your schooling from and where you did your college. And you graduated at a very young age of 15. I would love to know this story again for the audience. Please take us through a journey.
Yeah, thank you so much. My journey has been very I've been very blessed to have met many people and have had many wonderful lessons. So it starts in Peru. I was born in Peru, in the city of Cusco, and started a bit of my education there, and then moved to the US after my dad received the visa lottery program. And so going back and forth between the US and Peru taught me a lot in terms of mediating two different cultures and value sets. And so I went and pursued the field of mental health. And also I did a bit of kind of women's health as well. And after that, through the Fulbright program, I was exposed to kind of human rights. So I became interested in that. Did a couple other programs in what is kind of global governance, peace and conflict in other parts of Europe. And then finally got to work a little bit more in the field, and then decided to pursue another degree through the Rotary International in Japan. They choose 10 people every year. I can kind of master's is in peace and conflict studies, and now finishing my PhD in international relations through the Japanese government and Japan Foundation.
Wow.
So I am that's my journey so far. So it's a combination of many disciplines, but I think at the end of the day, they speak to my passion and what I'm really excited to be contributing to the world.
You made it sound so easy and so like, okay, I did this, I did that, but what a journey it has been. Oh my God, if we break it into, first of all, coming from a country and adjusting to a new country from Peru to US, at what age did you come and what did you face? What kind of, did you face any issues in schools, or you were comfortable? There is always an adjustment issue, right, when you come from a country. And how what was your experience as a child coming to US from Peru?
Through grades, but I think I also was held back socially in many ways. Yeah, sorry. I think there was a little glimpse. No, I think in general, adjusting throughout all these different cultures and customs were really hard at the beginning because it's a new community. But I think that the people that I connected with at different levels made me realize that it is possible. And I think graduating early at the beginning, I was like, oh my God, I have all the time I in the world. You know, I have 15 when I finished my master's, I was around 19 years old. But at the same time, talking with more and more people, I feel like, okay, I have enough time, but I want to really make these 3 extra years that I saved super productive. And so what can I do to be able to align better with what I want to do in the future, my own personal passions and things that I want to pursue later on. So in that sense, I really utilized kind of that frame of it's not that I'm saving time, it's that I'm now have this time to maximize it. So that was my mentality after graduate school in the States. And so I also felt like it was important to get outside of the Western bubble a little bit and see, kind of study and learn from a completely other kind of part of the world, because it makes you a much more richer person in in terms of perspective. Yes.
So I would like to start from the beginning. Like you said, you started after school. You wanted to pursue mental health, and especially you were working for um uh, uh, drug addiction, right? Your subjects were drug addiction. Could you just enlighten us, like why mental health? Did you see something around yourself to be pushed to that area that I want to do something? Was there something personal, or what did you read something? What made you choose that subject from such a young age? You wanted to do that.
That's a really good question. So my parents come from part of the indigenous community in South America,
Yes,
the Quechua
yes,
people. And so when we lived in the States, the US in particular has over 500 federally recognized tribes, and there's even way more tribes that are not necessarily recognized by the government. And they are in the indigenous community there, is very different in some ways, and they have their own issues and
yes.
troubles too. And I found a lot of parallels between my different values and culture with the one in the US. And I think one of the things that I saw very relevant was substance use and drug addiction because of many circumstances. So I wanted to contribute to that, not only because I found it a very important field, because if your mental health is not well, everything else is not well. It's a very core part that often is missing in a lot of the bigger picture. So it's either not discussed or maybe not given as much importance. And I think it's really the core of everything.
Mm,
So I think if I'm able to tackle mental health, then everything else will come and kind of make sense in what I pursue later on. So I was able to focus on like the Navajo tribe, and I worked with them at the intensive outpatient program, working on people who were sent to us and wanted to kind of quit drinking or quit a particular addiction. And that's where I learned it's a process. It wasn't just, okay, we're going to do therapy. It was on like getting them involved with the community, really seeing like the medicine circle, which is divided into 4 sections, right? The physical aspect, the social aspect, the emotional aspect, the spiritual aspect, and seeing how we can work with them. And that was life-changing, because I found it to be like very fulfilling and very wonderful. And so, but then when I went abroad, I also saw that I needed another kind of overall layer to understand international relations and kind of conflict analysis to also see, okay, where does the root of this problem come from, right? So this is where I think both of my interests aligned a little bit more. But that's the mental
wow,
health, I think,
that's
is something that I'm
uh,
still passionate about.
so.
Yes.
When you were doing, did you have any a mentor who under whom you worked and you learned from somebody? You wanted to pursue peace and conflicts as your topic for PhD, not mental health, right? So when did this shift happen? As you said, they are interconnected. Like, but when we talk of the word peace and conflict, it always comes across in our mind as international conflicts or conflict between states. But could it actually be a peace and conflict of a mind? So, what made you jump from this to the other topic?
So yes, I think oftentimes when we think of conflict, we do think of international conflicts, but I think also when we think about like long-term sustainable projects or things of this sort, uh, the kind of inner peace, inner mind come to also float, and that's something that's actually should be highlighted even more. And so that's where I saw the link. I think once a community, for example, that is facing any particular conflict or is at some sort of disagreement, there is also at a personal level, at a community level, right,
Mm.
that should be addressed, not just at the international level. So in that sense, that's where I saw the particular link. And a mentor that helped me kind of develop this understanding much more deeply
Okay. Yes.
was they were the Edwards, and they came from the Navajo tribe in particular, and they were very important part of my life when I was growing up in the US, and they kind of helped me realize this kind of link
Mm.
much more closely about how, yes, there are some like there are issues with that can be addressed by the government of the US, could also be addressed by the different tribes within the community. But
Okay.
at the same time, the people themselves have a story to tell, and you have to go much more deeper to really address a problem. It's not just part of a problem, right?
Mm.
And so I think that for me caused me to really decide, okay, I want to understand conflict analysis much more deeply, and then I want to
Mm.
understand kind of roots for peace building and what that encompasses, because it's so multidisciplinary, right? Like many issues have a peace angle that I think we don't necessarily see immediately.
Tell me, Elizabeth, some of the topics. I would be very interested to know what are the kind of topics are included in the masters, and what is your PhD topic? What is your highlight of the topic, and what do you actually study in peace and conflict? What are the different modules? What do you
Yes.
study about?
Yes, that's a good question, and I think maybe this is going to be a plug-in for people to apply. It's so Rotary International is very well known throughout the world, and there's 7 peace centers that they actually fund. There is one. They're in the UK, they're in the US, they're in Africa, in Australia, in South America. They used to have one, but no longer. And in Japan, they have one in Thailand, or they used to have one in Thailand and now in Japan. So these peace centers are dedicated to invite 10 people every year from around the world to be able to specialize this, often professionals in the field already. And the curriculum is composed of so many different things, but it depends on the center. So for example, mine, you can learn about quantifying peace, but it's also on like kind of unpacking the concept, understanding that it's a process, understanding how it's applicable to maybe learning about it within the context of the Japanese history. And so
Mhm.
I think it depends on all of that, but Japan was really focused on really reflecting on Hiroshima, reflecting on all the different events that happened during the Pacific War as well. And so that's what I wanted. But
Wow.
anybody can apply for this, and it's again 10 people around the world, and it's extremely diverse, a wonderful community, and Rotary is really close to my heart. So after that, after I finished that, I got funded by the Japanese government to continue my research for a couple more years to finish my PhD. So the Japanese government, it's a program called MEXT. And the other program that I'm now in is the Japan Foundation with the College for Women's Association. So they are also part of that support my PhD, and it's it's international relations, so it's a bit much more broader. So I think I went from very specific to a little bit more bigger and now way broader. And what I'm doing is a discourse analysis on how different communities are discussed within like the UN and international organizations. So a bit of like
Right.
mental health is throughout, I think scattered a little bit
Mhm.
throughout, but this one is more focused on discourse and how our words are really impactful. It's not just what's
Mhm.
happening in the world, but how we use our words and articulate them and how they're presented, and how they do make an effect on the people that we're talking about. So that's what it is on, and I'm based in
Wow,
Tokyo, Japan.
lovely.
Yes.
So tell me, when you are doing, it's just like a layman, I'm asking this question, when you're doing international relations and all, would
Yes.
you like to ever hold a position of importance, like where you can actually draft a policy or actually change something what the world is going through? Would you like to
Yes.
be a part of a governance? Sometime you aspire to do that?
Yes, yes. So my ultimate goal is to work for the US government. I think that's a very good place for me in the long term. But in the process, I
For,
have been
pardon, I
the
didn't get
US
the word.
government, the US
Ah,
government,
okay.
and US government. I
All
think
right.
it's yes, that's the ultimate goal. But I've gained different experiences in terms of being able to develop policy. In France for a year, I was at the OECD at the Nuclear Energy Agency, and we were doing exactly that. We were helping build policy specifically for more women to get into the nuclear field or consider the nuclear field,
Okay.
and for them to be more represented, as well as women and cisgender individuals. And that was very inspiring. I got to see a process of different countries coming together, having
Mhm.
goals. We provided a survey and then came up with a different kind of recommendations or scales for countries to adopt and get more women recruited. And it was really interesting because in these discussions, I learned that it makes a huge difference. Um, for example, for a man to say, okay, you have to have 3 years of experience. A man has maybe 2.5, and they're like, okay, I'll apply. It's close. But for a woman, 3 years of experience, like, I don't have 3 years. I have 2.5, so I won't apply. So like even the change,
Okay.
like approximately or around, made a big difference. And it's just one little thing that like an aha moment for me that was very important. And we also worked on like how to build trust among the people and the regulators within the nuclear sector. Um, and that became policy at the very end. And also just recently with the Y20, that was a place to be able to provide policy recommendations for our leaders to really consider, and cross-cutting policies that are not just peace focused, but are climate change, peace, health,
We will
future of
come to
work,
that.
all these things. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I
but
think those were like
yeah,
basic.
that I can see you are extremely passionate and a very good orator. You will make a very good you will a right fit for governance, and you are so passionate. Can you share? I'm very interested to know anything about when you are doing this piece and conflict, you're doing PhD over it. Did you meet people, you meet world leaders, maybe you're talking to people, your professors. What do you think about what is actually happening in the world? Why can't we still solve the conflict which is still going on in Ukraine and Russia? I know, I read a lot of this, so there are a lot of layers to it. What we see is not what we get. So when you are doing this peace and conflict, could you share some of your own thought process? Has it changed? Any incidents which you can share with us, which you think that okay, this doesn't look like what it is to the world. I know what actually is.
Yes. Well, I think I also feel like everybody has their own perspectives. I feel like even if I share mine, it differs from others, and I think that's the beauty of it. From the field that I've gotten to learn from and get experience in, I think I've been learning, I think that peace is a process, you know? Um and for example, for somebody in the military, peace might be the end of conflict. For somebody, a professor, might be a way to philosophize a concept. For somebody who dances, it might be a way to express themselves.
Correct.
And so it can be interpreted in many ways based on the person's kind of life, right? And but what I think what's important, I think, for reconciliation, and that I've gotten to know much more deeply, is that at the bottom of everything is respect. um there's a beautiful quote, I think by John Hume, and I'm not going to say it because I can't remember the exact words, but he kind of says that it's not your fault where somebody is born, but it is, I think it is at the very core of any discussion or
Mm,
anything that you're speaking to. What the main thing that should be, is respect. That should
absolutely.
stay forever. And I think that's something that I often comes to my mind, that in anything that we're not maybe on the same page, if there's respect at the center, we're going to progress. And I think there's also, in terms of reconciliation, this concept of, okay, I'm going to be winning. But no, reconciliation requires kind of both parties to be able to mediate, right? And what a quote that I loved, and it's not published anywhere, but it was from a training that I received in Japan. It was like, if mediation is if you can write the victory speech of the other opponent.
Wow,
So in that
lovely.
sense, if you're able to do that, and that means you're able to kind of really genuinely see their perspectives, also provide your own view.
Right.
And that's when I'm thinking, okay, how can we mediate these conflicts, and
Very
maybe internationally,
beautifully.
or at
Very
a personal
beautifully
level.
put. Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about a little bit about the country you are in. But living in Japan,
Yes.
what do you how did it change as a person? What are the philosophies you admired or you have
Yes.
internalized while staying in Japan? Did you change from what you were earlier? Are you a different, are your thought process changed?
Yeah, no, that's such a really good question, because I think context definitely builds a person and molds one. And I have been called, yeah, I've had the honor of calling Japan home for the last couple of years, and I think it's changed me in many ways. I think the main way is kind of be considerate of others and connect myself to nature.
Ah,
Um, I think coming from a place where the US is very individualistic, so it's often like, okay, that the individual will move forward, but here it's a community will move forward. And I think I've understood that. I think it has pros and cons, to be honest, but in a good way. It helps make sure that everybody is accountable, and make sure that you're looking out for the well-being of everybody. Um, and so that has helped me see not just, okay, the success of me, but the success of everybody, right? If I am doing well and you're doing well, we're both doing well. It's going to capitalize and maximize. So that's shifted. And also be considering, like, to be considerate of other people and how they're feeling, and
mm,
maybe their perspective a little bit more. And that's something I maybe I did, I when I was in Spain, I think I was considerate, but here it's a little bit more, which I think is makes them very hospitable, but also very in tune with emotions, very in tune with these soft skills that I think we often forget.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
in a
yeah.
very fast-paced environment, right? And then the last thing is connection to nature, because of their, I think, like obviously Tokyo, you see many buildings, you feel like you're in the city, but then there's also these little spaces, in the middle of a city, there's a park, so like
Mm.
it's completely green, you're able to reconnect, and I think that's helped me a lot to be able to kind of say, okay, the world is connected. And it goes back to also indigenous beliefs, like a mountain is like a sister, right, or a brother. And here,
Mm.
for example, yes, some sort of nature is a way to reconnect and kind of re-energize yourself.
Yeah. So tell me about what is the work culture like in Japan? Is it very, very time bound, or people work extra hours, or they will put in their best, or is it like, okay, my time is done, I'm going home, and now it's a free time? How is the work culture?
Right. I think it's a mix of both. Right now I'm working for a research institute in Japan known as the Peace Research Institute. And we have Japanese colleagues, but our boss is I think he's Canadian. And so in that sense, like I think it's more free. It's much more, not at all, I'm not saying easy, but a bit more flexible in terms of our work. And as long as we provide the reports and whatever we are responsible for, it's perfect. But I know in other work cultures, maybe not research focused. From what I've heard from some friends, it's like it does require a lot of long hours and time.
Mm.
And so like I think some of them even go back to sleep, like go back home super, super late. In fact, in the train, if you see somebody sleeping on the train, it's celebrated because it's like, oh, this person has worked really
Got some
hard. Whereas
sleep.
I would say like, why is this
Oh,
person sleeping on the train? So they say like, oh, let's get some of this. It's like really
okay.
nice to see somebody sleeping on the train or super exhausted because they're like, this person has worked hard, which is a completely different mentality than what I thought.
Mindset. Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's still very nice in that sense to know that they appreciate that. Um, but so I think it's a mix. And I think one thing that I'm blown away by Japan is the diversity. We often think Japan is homogeneous, there's just Japanese, but there's so much diversity from the indigenous people here to also people who are half, like for example, half Indian, half Japanese, half Italian, half Japanese. Like a lot
Yeah,
of this mix. And also
right.
the how do you say, people who are returnees, like born and raised in other parts of the world and coming back to Japan to pursue their university or going back to work. And so in that sense, I feel like it's a really mix of a lot of different people and kind of perspectives. And so in that sense, I think the work culture has made me much more disciplined,
Mm.
and a bit also more caring for people around me and more considerate in
Right.
that sense.
We go there as a tourist, as a visitor, and but somebody who actually stays there can tell the pros and cons of everything. So it
Yeah.
was very interesting to hear that. Thinking about, you have been to India for Y20 Summit. So take
Yeah.
us through the journey. How does this happen? Why, how you were selected as a delegate? Do you
Yes.
have to apply for it, or you be people connected to you? And the whole process of going to India, how many days you were there, and you, which are the places you saw? And I believe it was in Varanasi. So what did
Yes.
Varanasi gave to you as a human being? What did you learn? Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. There's a beautiful quote about India, right? If you haven't gone to India, you haven't experienced the world or you haven't lived, right? And that's so true. I was so excited to hear that the summit was going to be in India when I first began considering it. And G20 is this very big meeting and it's very important and influential, right? And I think when I decided to apply for it, I was a bit hesitant because every government chooses 5 people every year, because there's 5 tracks.
Applied from US government through US.
It's applied. So I'll explain a little bit, but it is with mostly the government, and it's like health, peace,
Mm.
future of work, global governance, and one more that I'm forgetting. But it is through. I applied through the Young Professionals in Foreign Policy, which is kind of the group that recruits and is connected to the kind of the U.S. side. Different organizations have their different ways of recruiting, different organizations, but the one was YPFP. And so they what you have to do is like provide a policy that you're passionate about and explain kind of why you think this policy fits, maybe things that you can kind of change, or what would you add to it? So like an essay on that, and then a couple interviews about how kind of you are somebody who, like, your negotiation skills and how you would be applying that when you're surrounded
Okay.
by 20 different countries, and examples of that. And then another one on like the group, about how well you engage with the other people selected, like how well that process goes. So
So when did you start applying, and how many months it took for all the whole thing to
So it took a
culminate?
couple months. I think it took for me to finish this whole application like 2 months, because I wanted to really draft something strong and also provide a strong response to all the questions, and then the actual interview and the actual acceptance. So they gave us about, I believe, 7 months before the summit we were chosen. So we had about 7 months
Okay.
to
Okay.
negotiate, because a lot of the negotiations happen before even the summit begins. So we provide.
Tell me what is in negotiation here, negotiation, what do you mean
Yes.
by that?
So we are supposed to provide some policy recommendations. And I think as
Okay.
part of the US, I have some policy recommendations that I really want to make sure that it gets into the final report. But other countries also have their policies, right? So
Oh,
then
got
we are
it.
there and we have to say, okay, I really think this should come because of these things. And other people say, no, I actually believe this is much better, much more important, much more applicable. And then there's also deliberations on the wording. For example, I don't think this word is appropriate. I think this word is too much. So it's on this. So for 7 months we're constantly on Zoom calls, like different time zones. We're talking to
Oh
20
my
different countries
God.
and delegations, and at the end
Oh,
constructing this maybe draft that we're finally in Varanasi going to finalize. And so that whole process was eye-opening, because I had to learn a bit of the context, a bit of the history of each country, also like the delicate matters, the things that would not make it in, and also how to really kind of influence or motivate them to even really consider the ones that I really want in there. I had a beautiful team of 5 people. Mine was the peace and reconciliation side, but then the other people who are amazing, and I will connect you with them as well. They're amazing youth that I have the honor of calling friends. And also negotiated on their side. And so at the end, there's this final in Varanasi, we finalize it, and we have cross-cutting proposals, meaning proposals that are across all the 5 sections. And we all deliberate and say, okay, we accept, we sign it, and then we then finalize our own, which have to be only like a page and a half. Like you have 20
oh,
pages, you're putting 20
oh.
pages of proposals, and you have to make it a page and a half,
So
which is really hard to
could
do.
you convince people your negotiation skills and all were in place? So could you convince amongst all so many people presenting that your idea should be on the final draft?
And I think it's not necessarily the word convince. It's kind of also let them see how this policy kind of affects them. And yes, so yes, I think it was really hard on some aspects. For example, I remember discussing some issues on like space matters. I think the outer space is really the future for peace in some ways. And so I think some countries were a bit hesitant, but we did at the end say like I guess research in this aspect and be able to provide more light, and it kind of made it through, but still it was there. Another one was on funding for a lot of peace building projects, because there's a lot of wonderful work that people are doing on the ground, but there's no money for it. And so where
Mm,
is the money coming from? What organizations should be able to help in that? And what I
mm,
was really seeing a big gap was not just the money, was the training, because a lot of the people on the ground have really great ideas, but then they don't even necessarily know how to translate that into an actual proposal, right? And
okay,
so and the process of how to get that funding and specifically directly to them. And so
okay.
it was yeah, some countries maybe not necessarily found it as important, maybe because it comes as a given, but I really tried to make sure that was included, because the training part is something that's often under discussed and under maybe under like not
Okay.
not thought about as much.
Right,
So things like
right.
these, just some quick
Okay.
examples. But at the end, it was all well. I think we all
So
collaborated and we all delivered.
so how many delegates were there total? And for how many days you were in India?
So I was there for about I think it was 7 days. We arrived, and it was the first day, it was a nice ceremony. And then I think towards the middle of the week, we started some main discussions. And then yes, it finished at the end where people sign the documents. 7 days in Varanasi, we got to see a little bit of the history. It's the place for Hinduism, right? Such a holy place with a lot of history. And we got to meet a lot of people from India, like especially students from India, who are also in our field, and interact with diplomats, interact with government officials, interact with people who are like very prevalent in India that are making a change, and talking to them. So in that sense, it was a big honor. And coming from the US, especially, I think hearing other people's perspective of the US, and also kind of seeing, okay, maybe yeah, like
Yeah.
addressing that was something I think was something that I had to go through
Wow.
as well. But yeah, it was wonderful. So there are 20 countries, and every country
That's 5.
every country has 5 people, and there were some countries that didn't make it necessarily, didn't come, but they were still some part of the negotiation process before the summit. And there was also a pre-summit in Leh, which I didn't get to go because of like my schedule, but the Indian government funded it. It was on how to be discussing before, like it was, I think, a couple months before the actual summit, and they were invited to this beautiful place in Leh, and I think they got to, connect much more
No.
deeply.
Yeah,
And some
I
people
read
say
about it.
it's beautiful, right? And some people, like, I think at the end of the day, this Y20 summit is very important. I really think it has a really genuine role. But more than that, what's more important, I think it's the connections and friendships you make in this whole process, because those will
Right.
continue and more projects can prosper from that. So my focus really on this was, yeah, making sure I try my best to get some of my points in, but also build friendship and
Mm.
memories with these other delegates that I know we were going to be working together in the future. And I've had, yeah,
Right.
that experience in of itself was beautiful.
So
Yeah.
whenever you grow up, you are doing any field, you can always lean on to these people and learn more. Lifelong connections
Yes.
are
Yes.
always helpful in whichever field. So that's very, very, very beautiful to hear what you did here in Varanasi. And was this your first summit, youth summit you attended, by 20? Uh, is there a possibility of people repeating, going back to the second summit also next
Yeah.
year?
Yeah. Some countries even chose the same people that went to Indonesia last year. So yeah, I think I would encourage anybody to go and look at how their government chooses people. I know in the US it's through YPFP, which is based in New York, Tokyo, DC. But for other countries, it's through other organizations. And if you have, like, they can also ask me and I can give the specific name or contact. But it's a process, and I think there's many different conferences and summits that go on, like um it's not just this one, like but you're gonna see the same people who attended this one in other ones.
Okay,
I'm
okay,
pretty
got
sure.
it.
Yeah, and the theme for this one, the Y20 presidency, it was like one earth, one family, one future. And that was the theme for this one. Like
Right.
long-term impact on decisions are not just going to impact one individual, they're going to impact so many, and that the future is kind of a shared one. And I think that was a really nice theme.
I was looking through your posts on LinkedIn and all those other team
Yeah.
members. What are they doing regularly? I was updating myself also, and it was so good to see that. But yeah, so I also want to bring in your TED Talks. You have been a TED speaker
Oh,
twice. So when did this happen? When was your first
yes,
TED
yes.
Talk, and what was the topic? I have seen your TED Talks, but I want you to speak about this a bit for my audience.
Yes, thank you so much for watching it. It means so much. Yeah, I gave one, I think, when I was leaving the US, and the last one I gave it last year. So like it's very interesting to see myself from both angles. But one was in the US, one was in Tokyo. The first one was on kind of it was called The Journey of Perspectives, and it was focused on the teachings of the Incas, the indigenous people, and how we can apply that to issues on immigration and refugees. And it was like, don't steal, don't lie, don't be lazy, like don't steal from others the opportunity to get to know you, don't lie about what you don't know, so be humble,
Yeah.
and don't be lazy about your work. And so I think that for me was a time in my life where I really needed to crystallize that, because working with the people from minority backgrounds, and also what I want to do, these were the values that are core to me, and I knew that I would be going forward, and they're still applicable to me, and I repeat them every day, as as part of my identity. And then the recent one was actually much more personal experience. And it was on like it was, does pain have to be painful? And it was on looking at how the different 4 categories of pain and combining it with kind of Japanese lens, and how we can utilize our pain to build resilience out of it. I had a back surgery because I was diagnosed with scoliosis when I was young, and like the recovery process was really hard for me because everything kind of my life stopped. I like even the surgery itself was really, really delicate. In fact, if something went
How old
wrong,
were you at the time?
I think I was in high school. So
Oh,
around finishing around like maybe 14 before finishing high school. So that was a time where I didn't even know I was gonna graduate. Like I was gonna, they would say like 2 years more, and at the time it seemed like a big deal. So but still like it was, yeah, it was hard, especially when my mom was signing the papers of like she maybe cannot walk anymore, or maybe she will lose her sight, or maybe like if something gets wrong, she will become paralyzed on this side. That was like for my mom, that was so hard. But I know I wanted the surgery because it was getting too painful, that my back. So it was on how that process teaches us how we can look at pain from 4 views. And how that can motivate us to be able to then see it as a strength. And I use Japanese concepts a little bit too. So if you know a bit of
wow,
Japanese, it
lovely.
makes a little sense. But
I
yeah, those are the experiences.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would post the links of your videos on
So
my
sweet of you.
description when I publish this, because people should know more about you through this TED Talks. They are
Mm.
amazing, and you are a wonderful package of a wonderful person to bring so much on the plate. I ask you to ask me a question that you can ask me anything you want, and I would answer it as honestly and as transparently as I can.
Okay.
So, what would that
Wait,
question be?
what is like if you had to pick one word or one concept, maybe it could be from India, maybe it could be in where you're in Dubai right now, one concept that encompasses your core belief or your core identity, what would it be? It could be, yeah, word or a concept.
My motto in life has always been to listen, to give space to others. Anybody, right from child to I also run a senior citizens club for almost 2.5 years online. So my idea is the best thing is the more you give chance to talk to people, you learn more. Listening to everybody, being non-judgmental, whoever he is, whichever class, whichever country, whichever age group, especially I listen to a child 7-year-old with as much importance I give them as I listen to a 70-year-old. So I think
Wow.
listening, empathizing, and uh, and basically just keep an open mind is something. I'm absolutely non-judgmental about anything in life. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for being today. And you had brought so much to this talk and so many diverse topics, and who you are, where you started from, and where you are, and where do you see yourself 20 years from now in the
I
governance,
see
in the UN
I see
government.
myself in governance, but also like I see myself continuing to work on becoming at a personal level still grounded and open and collaborative, and kind of you are a perfect example of what I want to see myself doing, like connecting with people, being
Oh,
so open and genuine. Honestly, you are the example of what I want to
thank
be.
you so
I
thank
think
you.
honestly your motivation to go and speak and have this dialogue, and you're also like your energy is wonderful. So in that sense, I would like to have similar values and similar energy, and also in the future get to visit there too.
You so much. And I wish you all the best for your PhD, for all your future. And whenever you are in Dubai, please connect to me. Keep connected, keep growing, be happy. And thank you so much for being here today. And I had a lovely time. Um, before I end my show, I tell end this line every day, every week, that do a little bit about this planet from your end, whether by saving water or not by wasting food. Any small thing will go a long way. So do it, start it from your home. See you again next time with a new person and a new perspective. Bye bye, Elizabeth. Thank you so much.